Good evening and welcome to the Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Open Space Subcommittee. I am your chair, Regina T. Boyce, and I want to go over very briefly the bills that we will be going over for this evening. I did make a mistake in committee when I announced we'll be reviewing HB 19, HB 45, HB 237, HB 109 and HB 117. I thought we were short on time, which is why I omitted to talk about the bills that we were just going to discuss, but we do have time, so we will have discussions about those bills. And to get us started, I want to start on the most interesting bill, HB 19 from Delegate Todd Morgan, Natural Resources, Northern Snakehead Common Name. I think Kristen is with us. And so, as you know, this bill proposes to change the name of the northern snakehead fish to the Patuxent fish. And as we saw through the committee hearing, that that name was not going to fly, but there was an agreement even through the Department of Ag that a better name would be would be beneficial to better market this particular fish. And as we know that name essentially was the Chesapeake Chana, and that's Channa. I did some research on that. Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we had the discussion in the committee about the proposed amendment to change it to Chesapeake Chana, but the Department of Ag does the marketing. So are they okay with this?
Yes, you want to call on Mr. Baylor? He is in the room.
Well, he's DNR. I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ag. Oh, they're not here. I know in talking with them that they preferred that was a better name suggestion and on par with what some restaurants are already calling the fish. And so I felt comfortable with that because they did come to the table. It's my lesson of knowing that they were doing the marketing of seafood.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to say that Ag does the seafood marketing. That's the
yep.
reason why I asked that question. All right, thank you.
Yep. Is there a motion or an appetite to amend the current?
I think Delegate Ruth has her hand up.
I'm sorry, I can't see it. It blends in with the wall. I'm sorry, Delegate Ruth.
No worries, Madam Chair. I was just going to ask if the Bailey fish is definitely off the table.
Oh. It sounds more like pet food. I think Bailey. Delegate Allen, I think I see.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, I don't know if we're really doing this right now, but if we're soliciting suggestions, I have spoken with several sportsmen, friends of mine who fish. They say there is actually kind of it's a popular fish on YouTube, actually. The bow fishing that is required to fish it is very, very popular on YouTube. And a lot of those fishermen have started referring to them as dragons or dragonfish, Chesapeake dragons, something along that line. So I just wanted to throw that one out there. I don't know if that's appetizing or not, but
yeah.
just throwing that one out there.
No, thank you. And I know, again, given Delegate Morgan's thorough hearing as it relates to all those, it was like 5 different fish that had their scientific versus their I guess marketable names. I was a little blown away that I didn't know that some of those fish had totally different names. So it allowed me to see that, marketing and naming of these fish are incredibly important, especially because, of course, we know they're invasive and we want more people to eat it and to market it. So I was hoping that we could amend and move this bill today, but we could still certainly have more discussion. Delegate Terrasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm okay with the Chesapeake Chana, but I kind of like dragonfish. It's kind of cool.
Sure. That's interesting. Let me write this down.
Well, I
think-
thought that was what Delegate Allen was saying, but maybe I misunderstood.
No, I was just mentioning it, but I do think I think culinary wise, Chesapeake Chana is probably the way to go, but just throwing that out there.
No, I appreciate that.
I apologize, Madam Chair. I didn't want to throw a wrench in the works.
I appreciate that that there's another quick thing that. No. I just think that that was the only name that came up during the hearing. I didn't know that there is also another name that it is called or named. Oh, I see the pro tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would recommend Chesapeake Chana. Dragonfish is a bit more exotic, and I don't know in terms of marketing. Also, I think of Game of Thrones when you say a dragonfish. So anyway, but yeah, so I would vote for Chesapeake Chana.
Okay. Any more discussion on this? Would anyone like to submit a motion to amend to the name as we seems like we agree.
So moved, submitted.
So I'm hearing a request to amend the bill from Patuxent Fish to the Chesapeake Chana.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Second.
Is there a second? Any
Second.
more? A second. Thank you, Delegate Trosser. Any more discussion on this? And I know Kristen's on here. Kristen, I want to just make sure we're not missing anything else.
This is my
Regarding
bill.
this,
actually.
Patrick's.
I'm sorry. Oh gosh, let's do that. We're not missing anything else, Patrick.
No, I'll touch base with the Agriculture Department before Friday, the full committee vote, just to make sure that it doesn't make them upset or anything. But
Yeah, no,
they
they
would have
seem
said
to
something by
agree.
now. Yeah, they would have said something by now.
All
Just
in
double
favor-
checking.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment from Patuxent Fish to Chesapeake Chana, say aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposition? Have a motion to move the bill as amended.
move the bill as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I do have one
Yes,
question.
sir.
Just for synchronization purposes, do we know if the Senate version of this bill is going to be amended in a similar way, or are we going to have two competing names?
I
Um,
suspect that they asked me, and I told them Chesapeake Chana,
Okay,
and they just gave me the thumbs up, like they'd heard the same testimony. So
yeah.
we'll see.
Because it's Senator Bailey, correct, as a crossfile?
Yes.
Yes, and I think I spoke to him in passing about it, and he was open.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No, thank you for bringing that up, Delegate Allen. Appreciate it.
We could go to conference on this bill.
Gosh, the things to go to conference for. All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposition? All right. Well, I think my internet is unstable. Sorry. So the bill is favorable from the committee with the amendment to change the name.
And Madam Chair, I hope since there is an amendment, we'll be able to pile on this bill.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want my name on this bill.
Who doesn't?
Is this going on your campaign literature?
Oh my goodness.
This is my campaign literature.
Oh Lord. All right, let's go to HB 45, which is a fun one. Patrick, this is also you, right?
Correct.
Okay. You want to go into this?
Yeah, this just basically you're not allowed to sell the taxidermy, the likes of many animals, and this just allows you to sell it. It just creates an exception for taxidermy and estates,
Right.
regardless of how the estate is run.
Right. And Patrick, you got the message that I sent from DNR about estate versus trust and probate.
Correct. Yes, I did.
Okay.
And they basically said, and I understand what they're saying. They just don't want to criminalize this for people. They don't care how the trust to probate runs.
Right. And I do want to remind folks that currently folks don't have a way to give away, transfer these types of specimens. And therefore, I believe DNR at some point will give us a tour of the basement of all the specimens that people have left with them because they cannot essentially get rid of them.
And Dylan is on the call if you want to call on him.
Yes. Can I call on DNR and then call on Delegate Terrasa?
Yeah, but is there anything that you want me to add in particular? I'd like to also add that we have Brian Eiler from the Wildlife and Heritage Service. If the question was, can you guys all come for a tour? Absolutely. You just tell us when, and we will make it happen.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna go to Delegate Terrasa.
Can we get lunch with that?
Not if it comes from the basement. Delegate Terrasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm looking at the language, but I just want to make sure I understand. So this is only from an estate. Like this is only when somebody has died with that in their possession.
That's correct.
Right. And so just to be clear, if I decided I just don't want this collection anymore, I can't necessarily sell it.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing you can do in that case is donate it or something like that.
So just to follow up on that though, if you can donate it, then why can't these be donated?
Well, they can, but it's very difficult to find a place to donate them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
What's
We
I
don't
see.
want to. We don't want to open it up to everybody everywhere.
Yeah, I don't
So,
want to see that either, but I'm just
Yeah.
wondering why it needs to be done for this.
It's
When they can do the same.
it's we don't get contacted by a lot of individuals every year, but it's enough that we feel that this is a compromise. So
Okay, thank you.
And if I remember correctly, this stuff also gets dumped in general. And so to kind of cut down on the dumping, to cut down on DNR's full basement collection, and to allow from an estate sale, I guess, just to move on. This is just one of those, I guess, quirky little fixes, isn't that so? Patrick?
Excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah. That sounded right.
Right.
Move favorable.
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Nope. Bill is moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any further discussion? All right. Bill moves favorably. And the next one is HB 237, the commercial northern snakehead license gear. Patrick?
Yeah, this basically is taking away some specifics, namely repealing the requirement that the buffer limit for people fishing with a bow and arrow for the snakehead license, 100 yards from another person or vessel, public, private swimming area, diver down flag, or stationary blind. And they're going to do it in reg is basically what it comes down to. Setting the gear and other requirements for snakehead fishing and regulation. And that's what the bill says.
Thank you. Before I ask DNR to add anything additional, are there any, okay, I see, let's go Delegate Ruth and then Delegate Terrasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think my question was just answered, but I just want to make sure, because we're removing a buffer, which seems like it could be a safety issue, but I also see it says a licensee who fishes under the license shall comply with all departmental regulations. So the intent is to put in regulation some things to make sure there's safety of these situations.
Correct. And work with all the stakeholders involved. And
Great. Thank you.
Delegate Terrasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's removing the buffer for what type of, this is bow hunt, like bow hunting and fish.
It's like
Like what?
spear fishing, if I'm understanding correctly.
Is it spear fishing or it's like you're shooting them with a bow?
Bow and arrow.
Bow and arrow.
Like a
I shot an arrow into the air.
But it's only the snake head.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm just, for
Okay.
whatever that's worth, I am concerned about us taking away those buffer zones.
Okay. Dale and Dylan, can you elaborate for the delegate?
Yeah, of course. And I also add that we have Sarah Widman from our fisheries service here as well. Who
Okay.
can chime in as well. But I would just firstly say that the department is not trying to remove the buffer requirements. I think what we learned is that we went through. It's a really good thing that this license is becoming more popular because it's helping us alleviate the snakehead pressure in the bay. But that's kind of led to more conflicts between users and residents. And through our public scoping process to develop regs to address that, we developed regulations that were a compromise with all the parties. And those regulations would have actually been in conflict with the current statute. So we're seeking to remove the buffer requirements in law, but still keep it in our regulations. But I defer to Sarah Widman for any more particulars on the regulations or on the bill.
Please, Sarah.
Sure. So those exact rules that are in the statute currently are in our regulation. That's where they came from. So that's what's on the books in our regulation. It's just mirroring them. 2 summers ago, I guess now, 2022, we had gotten some complaints because of the popularity of the license. People wanted us to add residents to that list. We wanted to change. There's a almost like, for lack of a better explanation, a string that you can attach called a retrieval line to your bow. So when you fire it, it's not lost somewhere, you can get it back. So we were going to add a 35-yard retrieval line requirement for the bow and arrow gear. There's a bunch of gear that are projectile gear. Bow and arrow is just one of them. So these apply in our regs to all the crossbows and bow and arrow, all the projectile gears. And then we were going to shorten, because of that retrieval line, the distance to a 50-yard distance, because they wouldn't be able to get that far with the retrieval line attached to it anyways. But those were some things that came out of 2 different scopings we did. But when we went to put the regulations through to ALR, we realized that this group there would be 2 different rule sets, one for this license type, if we change them, and one for everyone else. And that would make sense for enforcement purposes or understanding amongst our citizens. So we didn't proceed with them. So we're asking that these go away to mirror everything, so everyone follows the exact same ones, even if we go forward changing it in the future.
And regardless of type of license.
Right, exactly. So they're in place now. This would allow us to make those changes that we'd scoped with the stakeholders and make it apply to all the different users.
Delegate Terrassa.
So, but aren't you changing it then from 100 yards to 35 yards?
No, so it would change. What we had scoped the second time was changing it from 100 yards to 50, but adding a 35-yard retrieval line so that it's tied to your bow. So when you fire your arrow, there's a line tied to it. It can only go 35 yards. And then it would come back. They typically can't go much further than that, even without the retrieval line, but safety reasons. And it kind of matches up with some of our hunting rules as well. We have similar ones on the hunting side. So it didn't seem to really make sense that we would have it 100 yards because nothing would be going that far. So that's why we'd chosen that amount that we were looking at.
So they would be required under regulation to have the line. I forget what you call that again.
The retrieval line.
Retrieval line.
Mm-hmm.
And does that keep a bow from going further?
Yeah, it's attached essentially. There's a line attached to it, so that's essentially the length. They don't even typically go that far, but that would be as far as it would go.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are you okay, Delegate Terrassa? I see your face.
Yeah, I'm still not particularly comfortable. We keep reducing these buffers.
Uh-oh. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I'm still not comfortable. We just keep removing these buffer zones.
Well, help us understand your concern with the buffer zones if we're talking about just water.
Well, the way this is written before we take it out, it's away from swimming areas, divers, diver down flags, another person or vessel. I mean, it seems like a safety issue.
Mm.
And I haven't looked at that. I mean, I don't know what kind of bow. Is this like a crossbow? What kind of bow do you use?
Sarah, can you
And does
fill
it
us
have to
back in?
be, and I'm sorry, and does it have to be aimed down or can it be, I mean, I guess the water is down, but like,
So yeah, right now, all of our projectile gear, so it's crossbows, bow and arrow, actually trying to pull up our regs, how we had drafted it, but it would all fall in the same category. They all fall under projectile. We can make them separate, like we can have separate rules for each of the different types of projectile gear. How they're currently worded is how it's worded in that statute right now. Originally we had gone with scoping, just adding residents and keeping it at 100 yards. And we got a lot of concern from citizens who participate in those fisheries that that distance is so far and why do we have it? And they made a lot of questions and they pointed out some of the differences between our safety rules and hunting safety rules and why those are different. And so ultimately we went back and scoped the 50 yards, but we wanted that retrieval line in there as an additional safety measure if we're doing that. So that's how we ended up with the retrieval line, but the 50-yard buffer, because they're not really going to go beyond the 50 yards regardless, again, because you're out in the water. So that's how we ended up with that.
So
Okay.
it feels like you actually went from 100 to 85 per se versus
I mean,
I mean, you could see it that way.
I guess you could
Ish.
if you're within that, depending on where you are within the 50 yards, right?
Right. Delegate, oh, and I wanted to
Yeah.
follow up on Delegate Terrasa's question about how many potential injuries have happened with this type of quote unquote fishing.
I would have to go back and check with Natural Resource Police, but I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
So, okay, can I just follow up on
Yes,
that?
please.
Because my understanding from the last time this whole issue of like reported injuries came up was that it wasn't necessarily being reported to DNR or the Natural Resource Police. That was my understanding, is that they had no reports, even though we had reports of those things happening, and that if they call the police about it, it doesn't get to DNR. So that doesn't make me feel comfortable. And I also thought that originally we had, at least for crossbows, 150, 150. And then I guess this committee changed that at some point to 50.
I think that was for hunting, Delegate Terrasa.
But I thought that's what we were trying to make this consistent with, or maybe I'm confused.
Sarah, can you clarify, please, for Delegate Terrasa?
Yeah, so originally when we started scoping things, I think that's what we were trying to do. I'm just pulling up our actual, I can tell you exactly what we were scoping, the text of it. And then we had a lot of meetings, one-on-one meetings with a lot of our stakeholders, with concerns over residents and all the things we scoped, including, keeping the distance, not keeping the distance. And ultimately, that's where that 50 with the 35-yard retrieval line compromise came in, that was still something we felt was acceptable.
Could that be put in the law rather than just in regulation?
So we could keep just changing the statute, but it would be, like for instance, another thing that we had in there that has nothing to do with this bill was that international diving flags aren't called international diving flags anymore. They're just diving flags. So it's cleaning up text like that as well. But the way it's worded, in what we had scoped, the way it was worded was literally for all the projectile gear as a group, is how it was worded.
Okay, so this final comment, it's just that I would prefer to see that in law rather than just regulation, because in the same way it's easier to change to clean it up, it's also easier to change to, in another, another few years, if there are different people around, that could be changed easily in regulation. So I'm still opposed, but thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was initially concerned about removing the safety regulations when I looked at this, but the safety buffer. But as I understand it, they're not being removed. They're going to be in regulation. The safety buffer is still going to be there. It's being reduced from 100 to 50, but that will have no real impact because they'll have to have this retrieval line. So it's never going to be able to go beyond 35 feet. So essentially there's, you know, more buffer than is needed because it'll never reach 50 feet. So if my understanding of all that is correct, I'm okay with this change. And the fact that the bill also adds that, you know, the licensee has to comply with departmental regulations. So, you know, I think that strengthens it a little bit. I mean, I think they have to anyway, but the fact that we're saying in the law that they have to comply just makes it a little stronger. So thank you.
I'll move favorable.
Second.
Oh, I cut myself off. A second, any discussion? Okay. All in favor, for HB 237, as is, no amendments, say aye. Oppose?
No.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Bill moves favorably. All right, the next two bills I just want to have a discussion about. I want to spend about 10 minutes each on it. HB 109, and that is the natural resources submerged, aquatic vegetation, alterations or removal requirements. That's 109. Sorry, I've got a big binder. The council want to go through that one?
Yes, and Dylan, feel free to fill in if I miss something, but I see that this bill really only does two things. Other than utilities, it takes away the ability of riparian owners to just totally wipe out the grass. It allows them to trim and alter the grass, and it also limits the area that they can trim and alter for access to boating channels from 60 feet wide to 20 feet wide. So trimming instead of removing, and 60 feet instead of 20 feet. I mean, 20 feet instead of 60 feet. Does that sound right, Dylan?
Yeah. The two other points, and I also add that we have Rich Orth, the director of the Resource Assessment Service, on the call. Two other points. The bill, if Marylanders are utilizing those exemptions for the 60 to 20 feet that we just discussed, then it is going to require those individuals to contact the department and let us know what information about that SAV removal so we can better track it.
That is correct.
And then the second point is that it also incorporates the coastal bays into that exemption. So it's not just the mainland bay, but it would be the coastal bays as well that will have the ability to utilize that exemption. But that's about it. Thank you, Madam Chair. And Rich, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Excellent. It actually changes to all tidal waters. So coastal bays and trips up to where the tidal point is.
Okay. Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just so I'm clear, the 60 to 20 means that the width of the area that someone can remove SAVs is narrowed from, it's currently 60 feet, it's now 20 feet without having to get DNR approval. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other questions? Any other concerns? And I think I did have a question about this. Hold on, let me go back to my notes. When I originally read this, I think I had asked the question. Hold on. Notes. Yeah, I did. When I first read this, I said, can we define trim?
I think trim is a more accurate word right now. It's remove. I'm not quite sure. Trim is like a haircut. We probably don't want to put haircut in legislation, so
No.
it's trimming. It's cutting it. It's not plucking it out of the ground. So before it was harvest. The words in law right now are harvest and remove and eradicate. So those words are being changed to trim and cut.
That's helpful. Look at my additional notes. And just so I'm clear to the pro tem's point, if I'm somebody with riparian rights and I do want to make this trim within this 20 feet, I can do so first by contacting you to say, hey, I'm going to trim this. And then I guess,
They don't, if they do 20 feet, they don't have to contact DNR.
okay,
If they do more than 20 feet, they have to contact DNR.
that's clarifying. And then is it permission or I'm going to do this, or do I have to wait for you to say it's okay? Then I can go above my 20 feet.
It is not permission. It is, we are not in a regulatory status for that.
Got it.
It is,
That's, yep.
yep.
Okay.
Although I have to go back, I really would like to explore that further, whether they have to within the 20 feet.
Okay. Okay. Let me see what else.
Oh,
And
no,
this
he
is
is
regardless-
correct.
Right, and these SAVs are regardless of whether or not they are native or non-native.
Correct.
Correct. And then there again is an exemption for water treatment and discharge permit holders.
That's correct.
And does that mean
That's
that
current law.
those individuals could go in and potentially harvest and not trim?
They could, we prefer not, and we were asking them to let us know.
If for whatever reason they feel like they have to.
Correct, wider than
And-
20.
And if I am a discharge permit or water treatment, I guess the question would be, how would I determine that I would need to do a harvest or a removal versus a trim?
They want to keep their pipes clear.
I hear you. Okay. Fair enough.
I think he's right. That's kind of the point, is that they'll do whatever they have to keep their pipes clear,
Which means they'll take it all up.
if that's what they need. I mean, they're not going to put in more work than they need to, but
No, but it somewhat defeats some of the purpose of having it there to begin with. Although I get the intention for them. And then the other, I guess, question is is from DNR, whether it's Dylan or Richard. How much more data does the department determine that it's going to have with more people reporting given this bill?
Yeah, so I asked that exact question to our SAV scientist, and currently it's 9 people per year that talk to them. And we anticipate this being somewhere in the 30 to 40 neighborhood, and that's about it. Something that's very manageable with our current staff and no fiscal impact.
Okay. And so just to play devil's advocate, suppose it ends up being more. Suppose people are like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna trim and do whatever more often than not, or whatever reason. It's not 30 people, ends up being 90 or 100.
Then I'm going to make that person work a lot harder.
Okay.
Dylan's got a real answer for you.
Okay.
No, yeah, that I think echoing everything Rich said, I think the other thing I would say is SAV is a part of the Chesapeake Bay goals. So it's really important that we continue to monitor and track this, especially as we head into 2025.
Okay.
So if we get more, I think that would be really exciting for everybody.
but you're only anticipating about maybe 30 people. It could be those same 9 people per year.
I think we were in, I think I said in between 40 and 50 people. So that's what our next anticipation on this is. And again, remember, this will be only people that are above the 20 foot that are notifying us. And 20 foot was selected because that is the standard dredging type practice in marinas and harbors for width of a channel. And we don't anticipate people doing more work than they need to.
Okay. And the assumption is the 20 feet and under, because they're trimming it, it just contributes to water health, bay health, and therefore that's not a concern to you more than the larger amount of area cut and or removed.
Correct. And most importantly, we are not talking about eradication and harvesting. We're
Mhm.
talking about keeping that SAV, keeping that root base there so that those SAVs flourish.
Got it. Is there any other questions regarding HB 109? We're still gonna hold on to this one for today and get some more information from Dylan and Richard. I appreciate you being on. Delegate Terasa.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I actually think I just need to look at this more closely because I'm confused about the section it's in and why all those other words are being taken out. But since we're holding it anyway, that's fine. I just didn't want you to think there were no questions. I can let you know what they are once I look at it.
Oh, you're saying you don't have questions, you want to look at it more?
I don't have questions right this second or nothing that I want to ask. I just want to like look at it closer. But it sounds like you're holding it anyway, so that's cool.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Since I'm dropping off now, I just wanted to say something real quick.
Yes.
The cross file to the gear bill that y'all voted out today, the Northern Snakehead gear bill, the cross file has passed the Senate.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The cross file has passed the Senate.
Okay. As is?
Yes, clean.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We will move on then to HB 117. Thank you so much, Patrick. And he's gone. Kristen, 117.
Yeah, this is a departmental bill that's establishing the Maryland Geological Survey Fund in the department to finance long-term budgeting and planning for survey projects, procurements, and equipment purchases. There's not like a new source being established for the fund. The department indicated that they intend to put money that they get from services that are provided to allow it to stay and remain in the department so they can plan some future expenses throughout the contract or equipment purchases. And that's all I got.
Before I jump into questions, are any questions about this bill, which we are going to hold? I just wanted to have a lot more discussion about it. I did want to follow up on a question and I thought I heard during the hearing, Richard, about receiving donations.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you elaborate on that part?
Yes, ma'am. So donations in state fiscal language is not really a donation. Donations are like if I sell publications, the resulting income is considered a donation. If I cut a contract with Anne Arundel County to study their water in the underground water systems, that is a donation from Anne Arundel County to Maryland state government. So in special fund contract land, those donations are called that. So under 03, we currently have a not in statute 0319 special fund in the Maryland Geological Survey, which cannot be used for recurring income, and it cannot be used for interest and all that kind of stuff. So this new 0326 special fund will be able to use those funds, and most importantly, be more transparent in the way we use those funds. Right now, if I charge for use of equipment, I have to spend it within that year, even though, you know, the degradation of that equipment might be over 3 to 5 years. So this allows us to bank those monies to properly utilize those funds for what we're saying we're using them for. So that's the point of this, really, is to be more transparent in that, to get a little bit of, I mean, it's going to be a minimal level of interest in those funds, but we're using them in the proper way.
And so I think what I also hear you saying, Richard, is that you contract out, or the geological survey contracts out its services every now and then, whether it's to a county, to someone else, and that money otherwise is considered donation when you contract out your services.
Correct. And it's not every now and then. We, with the exception of the Bay Bottom survey that was been funded for the next 3 years, over half of the income to the geological survey is through external contracts.
Which then goes into that other fund.
It would, all those special funds would go through that other fund, and it would still be spent, you know, pretty thoroughly, except that there's depreciation, if lack of a better word, depreciation on the equipment that we use, and or large laboratory expenses that are best to be bought in large bulk quantities would be used at that same time frame. So it allows us to, again, spend those monies appropriately rather than trying to nickel and dime things here and there, and frankly not be very efficient in spending those monies.
And essentially the work you're contracted, you can put the money back into supplies, equipment,
yes.
so on and so forth.
Right, and that's being done now, except it's being done in an inefficient way, and something that is, this could be a much better way of doing that.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about this? Thoughts, concerns? You don't care?
I care.
Okay, well, we know that. Trying to wake up these folks. I know it's dinner time. I'm sorry, Delegate Ruth?
Yeah, I mean, it seems reasonable to me. It sounds like it's really just an administrative, you know, creating the fund to better manage the money. I don't really have any problem with it.
Okay. Yeah. DNR.
Just wanted to say thank you for DNR night tonight.
You're quite welcome, DNR night. And if there are no other questions, we're gonna still hold this, kind of run through it, and then add it to the list for next week. What did you say, Jay? Excuse me, Delegate Jacobs? You're on mute.
I said, this is just the first one.
Yes. The first of many.
It's the first of many.
Many.
Dylan, you're doing a good job, and Richard's doing a great job. The staff is doing very well tonight.
Very well.
We thank you very much.
Thank you for being on. If there are no further questions or thoughts or concerns, I will release you to dinner. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.